Hey again, it's Drew from Power Through Consulting. This time we're going to talk about our page templates, and in particular, we're going to start with using them for actions. It's the same page template. You can see right here, it's this one, the web template June 13, and there's a link to it and help documentation. So it's the same template you use whether you're building a donate or an action page, but there are some slightly different customized fields between the two. So we just want to give you a separate walkthrough for actions and for donation pages, so you know where all the different things are. So for the action pages, because there are some custom fields in the form, so some particular things, I'll show you. This is what the action page looks like in the example we've set up. So there are, in particular, some custom fields. Put my over here, you can see we have a country field turned on, and you can't see them right now. If I change my country to a country that is GDPR compliant, like France, you can see I can get these additional GDPR opt-in fields. So those are all a series of custom fields on here that you would need to remember to put in if you were creating this from scratch. And likewise, this little footer text above the gray bars here, which changes again based on being in GDPR or not. That is also something that needs to be added to the individual actions, as well as your normal letter text and who the targets are and all the things you're used to adding. So for that reason, you may find it easier to come in and just duplicate this particular action if you click List All Actions. You can come in and just copy this particular one, and there's a link to that individual action, so you know which one to copy. It's key 23126. So it may be easier to do that, and that'll save you some time, at least on the form fields. This will be all set up. On the other hand, this is a targeted letter to Congress, so if you wanted to create a new petition, for example, you wouldn't be able to copy this because it's not the same kind of action. So I'll also walk you through all the individual fields you need to add on there and how to do that, just so you know if you do need to create an action from scratch, how to do it. So when you create a new action, unlike emails, you don't have to pick the template first. That shows up secondarily in this little yellow box at the top. But again, it's all one template, and the one you want to pick is always this one called Web Template June 13, 2018. That has all the right source code for the background, image, the footer, and also already includes the stuff you need to format the GDPR compliant parts. So just pick that template, should be the only one you need. In here, these fields will show up blank if you create a new action, and that's probably how you want it. You'll get a reference name and an action title that's consistent across all the kinds. If it's a letter campaign, so it's sending a letter to Congress, you get the option of adding a topic. If this were a petition or letter to the editor action, you don't get that option necessarily. You do always get this description text option. There's no special code on here, so you can do all the things you normally do. Add in YouTube videos, add in pictures, a call to action text, just follow your own normal best practices. Here in the footer, we do have some particular text. You can see when you look at it on the back end, you're essentially seeing both forms of the footer text, the GDPR compliant text for EU countries and the more general text for anybody who's not in the EU. And if you look at the source code for that, you'll see that these are wrapped in some particular named divs. So the usual best practice is if you have a letter campaign, you can just copy this example, and then all that stuff will already be included. If, on the other hand, you're coming from scratch, come over to this particular action, open up the source code view of the footer, and just copy all of this. You can do Control-A or Command-A on the Mac, select all of it, copy it, come back into your new action where this footer area will be blank. Make sure you're in the source view and just paste it in. That'll make sure you get all the text with this right, lighter gray font color, that it's wrapped in the div with the correct ID, and that all those settings are set correctly so that when you apply the template to it, it'll do all the stuff that it's supposed to do with turning on and off the GD compliant footers in the correct way. The one other place where there is, so again, content, this is all totally normal. For a letter campaign, you get space to write particular letters for Congress and add alternate versions and all that stuff. All that is totally normal. There's no special code here. Same thing with targets. You can just pick these exactly like you normally would, and check the SALSA help documentation if you're looking for more support on how to target Senate versus House, or add custom targets to your actions. All that is totally possible and will not change anything about your template settings. The one where things change is on the user information. This is essentially where we're defining what goes in these various fields. So because this one is a letter action, it automatically will pull up first, last email to be required. You should probably leave all those, but you can, if you want to, make email not required, or not require a last name if you don't want to. All that, again, because it's a letter campaign, it also pulls in the full street address. For petition campaigns, I believe it does not pull in street, city, state, and zip. So you can add those if you want on a petition campaign, but you don't have to have them. And you can remove these if you want to. None of that will influence the layout of the form in the template. The ones that we do need to add for the template to work right, one, you need to add the country drop-down field, and you need to make that required so that we're compelling people to answer. You can see if I come back and turn that off, it will show up just like email and phone are required fields on this particular form. Country shows up as a required field, so I have to fill that out before I'm allowed to submit my letter and send it to my representatives. So you want to put country in and make it required, and then there are right now these 4 GDPR compliance fields. We'll talk in a later video about GDPR compliance in particular and how to add more of those fields if you want to. But if we were starting from scratch and we wanted to add these, you would just come down here to the bottom and click the button to add another field. They're all labeled the same with GDPR compliance. So you can see here's a block of them. I already have them all added in, but if I were going to add it in, I'm going to add it like that. And then you want to make these optional, not required fields. The reason why is that these come in by default. When you pick these fields, they show up in here pre-checked. So you can see by default, it is checked yes, but people have the option to uncheck it. And that is part of the GDPR compliance. You're required by law to offer people the option to opt out of particular forms of communication. For right now, the ones that apply for your EU members are email, postal mail, phone and text, SMS, and then a general collection about cookies and identifying information. So if you run ads, or if you have tracking things like Google Analytics on there, you're letting people know that they are being tracked and that you're using cookies to do it, and that they're opting into that. So you want to put all 4 of those on there, and you want to make them all optional fields. The reason why is that people are opting in and out of them. They have the option to opt out of them if they're in an EU country. If people are in a non-EU country, like Chile, they don't see those fields, but they still show up as pre-checked. So by signing, you can see, right, we have this default thing for the US and anybody who's not EU, that if you are signing, you will be added to the email list, and you can unsubscribe at any time. And then when you guys have an updated privacy policy in terms of use, you'll want to spell that out more so that people are clear. If you're a US member, this is standard practice. I don't think you're surprising anyone, but that by signing the action, they're going to get on an email list. If they submit their postal address as is required here for this letter action, you might also send them a letter in the mail letting them know about the campaign. Basically, they're opting in to communication for that. So your privacy policy is where you'll spell that out for people in more detail. If they want to know that stuff, they'll be able to click on these links and get more info. In general, the expectation is EU people get a specific option to opt out of communication if they want. And folks who are in the US or non-EU countries don't even know about it, but by signing the action, they get opted into the list and can be talked to basically any way you want to. So that's the action page template. None of the other parts in here, those are the only parts that are changed by the template in particular, the GDPR compliance stuff. Everything else, you should just follow the normal steps. So on the follow-up tab is where you can define if you want people to get a particular auto-response email, you want to redirect them to a donate page or a tell a friend page or whatever you want to happen with them afterwards. all that is normal. And then you also have these options at the end. Again, this is just normal. You can set them to be active or not active. You can put a cap on the number of emails they're sent. All that stuff, again, just normal Salsa setups, and it'll be slightly different for petition campaigns and letter to the editor campaigns and other kinds of actions. But you can apply the same template and it will style all of them. And so long as on the user information, you are adding the country field as required and adding these 4 GDPR compliance fields as optional fields. And so long as your footer in the main content area and down here includes all these disclaimer texts in the right fonts and also has the right divs wrapped around it, all of these will show up the same. So those are the only things to look out for is the footer area and the user information. Make sure you have those 5 fields on there for all your actions, whatever form. And that should be it. Let us know if you have any questions or if you find bugs along the way, but these should be ready to work for you on the action side. And we'll talk about a couple of the customizations for donate pages next.